You already know. It's either Poland Spring or Spindrift. But we're trying something new. This is my idea for next year is I want to make sure that whatever we teach in class, there's a YouTube video to back up so y'all can watch at home if you need some extra help on your homework. Naturally, this says seventh grade math, but now that you know that MCAS is over, that's when we start doing eighth grade math. All year long, we went through seventh grade math, and so we want to refine those skills. But also, like, why not just do some stuff you're gonna do next year? So let's get it. Welcome, y'all. So in this case, we're gonna go over the warm up. We're not always gonna go over the warm up, but I think for today's lesson, it'll be important. So we were asked, what is the definition of multiplication? Um, there's a couple definitions, but most commonly remembered is that it's repeated addition. So for instance, if we're gonna expand 3 times 5, we can say that 3 is the number in groups, 5 is the number of groups. So we can write 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. We added 3 5 times, which we know is 15. Or we could have said 3 was the number of groups, 5 was the number in each group. So that's 5 plus 5 plus 5. 5 added together 3 times, which is still 15. Both of these are our methods. Remember, we call this a factor and this a factor. Or in fifth grade, if you remember, this is your multiplicand and this is your multiplier. We know that the answer to a multiplication problem is your product. And so what we were asked for is to infer, what do you think the definition of exponents is? I probably should have said R, but whatever. Um, and we talked about this earlier in the year, but in seventh grade, we don't really work with exponents a lot unless we're working with circles. But what we remember that this is repeated multiplication. And so, for instance, if I wanted to expand 8 to the fourth power, right, I would do 8 times 8 times 8 times 8. And that's what we were looking for in our warm-up. All right, let's work on example number 1. So which is larger, 3 to the fifth power or 5 to the third power? So what we're going to do is we're actually going to expand 3 to the fifth and 5 to the third. What we need to remember is that our 3 is considered our base and 5 is considered our exponent or power. And so what that means is when we expand 3 to the fifth, we want to expand our base 5 times. So this becomes 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 to the fifth power. And then again, if we do that again for 5 to the third power, this is just 5 times itself 3 times. So I want to write that out. 5 times itself 3 times. So we get times 5 by itself 3 times. So 5 times 5 times 5. And now let's simplify. So here we can solve this as 3 times 3 is 9. And remember, we're going from left to right. So maybe we can do another 3 times 3. And so this becomes 9 times 9 times 3. Here we keep going. 9 times 9 we know is 81 times 3. And now let's figure out what 81 times 3 is. Maybe we do this on the side because maybe we can't do that in our head, which is fine. So 81 times 3. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 8 is just 24. And so this becomes 243. That means 3 to the fifth power just equals 243. We did that by expanding it out and then multiplying down. What about 5 to the third power? Well, just like before, PEMDAS says we go from left to right. So here, and since it's multiplication, we technically can go in any order. That's called the commutative property of multiplication. But 5 times 5 is 25. Bring down our times 5. Now 25 times 5, maybe we do this out. Maybe you know this in your head, but again, we can just do the multiplication algorithm. 5 times 5 is 25. So we have our 5 down here, and then regroup our 2. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is going to give us 12. That means 25 times 5 is 125. And so which one's larger? Well, 3 to the 5th power equals 243. 5 to the 3rd power equals 125. And so what we just learned on MCAS is if it asks you to explain your reasoning, you actually need to write it out. All right? And so blank is larger than blank. This is a good sentence frame. I wrote this out just to save time. Well, 3 to the 5th power, maybe I'll do this in a different color. Hopefully it shows up. 3 to the 5th power is larger than 5 to the 3rd power. How do you know this? How do you know that 5 to the 3rd power, well, how do you know 3 to the 5th power is larger than 5 to the 3rd power? How do you know that? Tell the state. I know this because 3 to the 5th power equals 243, and 5 to the 3rd power equals 125. As a result, 3 to the 5th power is larger than 5 to the 3rd power. Notice how we explained our reasoning with the math above? Yes, you showed your work up top, but if it's asking you to explain your reasoning, you need to explain it like this. And the reasoning why is because when we take MCAS, like some of you may put this work in your box, but if you were to able to explain your work out with these words, you would end up getting full credit. All right. All right, so for example 2, how many times greater is 2 to the 8th power than 2 to the 2nd? Clearly we know 2 to the 8th power is greater than 2 to the 2nd. Why? Because it's raised to a higher power. Interestingly enough, you do not need to solve these out and then divide. All right, that's not what we need to do. What we should do is expand. So to expand, right, we need to expand. So 2 to the 8th power just means 2 times itself 8 times. So this would be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times 2. Well, that's a 7. And so what we have here is 2 times itself 8 times. And then 2 to the 2nd power is just 2 squared, aka 2 times itself. So 2 times 2. And so how many times greater is 2 to the 8th power? Well, in 2 to the 8th power, right, we have it as 2 times 2, right? We have that located here. And so what that means, right, 2 to the 8th power is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, is actually 6 times greater. And so if I was to bring this down here, what we can see is that 2 times 2 is 2 to the 2nd power times 2 to the 6th power. And so what this means is that 2 to the 8th power is 6 times greater than 2 to the 2nd power. Notice how we didn't actually have to solve anything here. Alright, and to finalize our stop and jot, what we had is you can apply the product rule. And so what the product rule tells us you can add the exponents of two or more terms if they have the same base, which 9 is our base, so that would mean 9 to the 5th power times 9 to the 3rd power would just be 9 to the 8th power. Pause the video, copy this down. See y'all next class.